I don't have headphones on, but we're live. What is going on? I guess we could do it today without headphones because we're not doing Twitter Spaces. Yeah, we're not doing Twitter Spaces, so we're not going to have any weird echoes. Welcome back to another episode. Go FUD Yourself. It's Monday, and as you can tell,
it is Monday.
I am back in Miami and feeling really good about it.
I'm going to tell you all about ETFs. It's going to be really exciting.
And we're going to tell you all about ETFs. So you're excited that I'm back from Miami, or in Miami, I'm sure. Anybody that's watching, really
people are jazzed about it.
That I was freezing in Canada. Now I'm warm, comfortable, back at my spaceship workstation. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. Where are we starting?
Okay, well, we're going to start with spot ETFs because Hashdex has also registered for a spot Bitcoin ETF. Very exciting. And then we get to talk about BlackRock a little bit. This is a bit of last week's news, but there's a little bit of overlap with things that happened over the weekend. So such as BlackRock getting fined $25 million and what's going on with their Bitcoin ETF and why they got pulled off the DTTCC website and all that kind of stuff. And then we've got Do Kwon, which is kind of exciting. I don't know if you're stoked about that. We're also supposed to talk about SBF, but I don't want to. And if we have time, we will talk about Pepe.
I like Pepe.
Do you? I thought you were all anti-shitcoin.
Oh, I'm anti-shitcoin. I like the idea of Pepe. I think it's just an interesting one to follow. We can talk about it later. I have some interesting thoughts.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. All right. Quick reminder, we're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching here, that means you're a loyal viewer because we are off of Twitter Spaces this week. And we are also not streaming live to the Rome Blockchain Twitter because somehow we managed to get in Twitter jail. So we're going to do what we have to get out of Twitter jail. So we are on YouTube.
There could be new viewers. Maybe they're new viewers on YouTube.
Maybe it's new people on YouTube.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we're not on Twitter on the normal channels this week. So I think it's 7 full days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we started on Friday. So now we got to go this whole week and weekend, and then we're good. So anyways, we're a live show. It's obvious based on my banter most of the time. Like, share, subscribe. Help us get the word out, please, if you can. We don't commercialize this puppy. We're doing it really just to help people.
Although you're wearing merch.
Although I'm wearing merch. Man, my transitions, they're becoming too obvious. But I am wearing my Superman outfit. I am blockchain developer. Shout out to Tatum.
Nice.
I like this shirt. It's cool. It's funny because I was on a call with a VC who was wearing the same shirt one day, and that was cool. We were both wearing the same.
Are either of you devs?
He probably is. He probably knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. So anyways.
All right. Well,
all right. Frigate, let's go. Where are you? All right, we're back.
Okay, let's start with spot ETFs. Are you ready?
Oh man, I've been waiting all weekend for this.
Okay, so we already know that BlackRock applied for spot Bitcoin ETF on June 15th this year, okay, and that it has taken freaking forever, and I believe it's still not approved.
No, it's still not approved. There's a lot of speculation that they're going to have to approve something eventually, especially because of the Grayscale lawsuit. We talked a lot about this, that the SEC has found themselves in between a rock and a hard place, and they're going to have to support the ecosystem a little bit instead of just constantly trying to beat us down. So I think we're going to have to see something positive here. Is BlackRock the first one that's going to get approved? I hope not. And the reason I hope not, okay, wait.
Whoa.
First,
BlackRock's going to come for you.
I don't care who goes first. We just need an ETF. We need that because it legitimizes in the US significantly the existence of Bitcoin, and it's the country's commitment to its longevity, in my opinion. Now, if BlackRock comes in and gets the approval first, when there's ARK Invest and Grayscale and Gemini and 10 million other ETF applications that are in there, this to me would show an obvious bias towards incumbents. incumbents from traditional finance. Now, BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. So, I mean, again, they also have a little bit more credibility and clout than some of these other people. So I can understand why, but the applications are all based on the same premise. And all groups that are applying for them are large enough and liquid enough, I think, to support it. So we'll have to see. I hope it doesn't get approved first, I think, because there will be such a negative narrative around that. What I'd love to see is they all get approved at once, or they get approved in the order of the most current application. So a few of them have pulled and resubmitted applications. In my opinion, that restarts it. Your original application wasn't good. You put in a new one, fine. Mm-hmm. But there should be some ordering of who should get approved first based on when their applications were in my opinion. But who knows? Fairness is not always the primary focus.
Do you think the SEC cares about being fair? Well, the reason that this is kind of a big deal in the news right now is that more and more keep applying to have spot Bitcoin ETFs. And so Hashdex just last week also applied and apparently has been working closely with the SEC to ensure that their application is up to snuff.
Well, I think, again, that the conception amongst people I talk to in the space are that we know the prescription to get approved for an ETF. Like, we know exactly what you have to have. We now know, we've seen enough of these applications and the relative discussion around them. We now know, generally speaking, what requirements are there to make the SEC comfortable. So they've never come out and blatantly said it, but everybody has a pretty good idea. So I think now it's just a function of like, okay, when it's happening, everybody's piling on and making these applications. Like, let's just go. Like, so let's stop dragging our feet on this damn thing and go.
Can you tell people why a spot ETF would be so important for crypto? What does it do for the average retail user?
Yeah, so there's been one in America, as far as I remember, futures ETF, that Bitcoin futures ETF that's been approved. The major difference between spot and futures, we talked about this a little bit before, but the major difference between spot and futures, although there's many, is one, the spot version actually has, when you invest in that ETF, it actually holds that relative amount of Bitcoin, digital Bitcoin. And futures ETF is numbers on a screen. You're not owning actual Bitcoin. You're just owning representative value of what Bitcoin would be worth had you actually owned it. They're easier to approve because there's a lot less management in them. There's no custody. There's a whole bunch of other things of the Bitcoin itself. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of meaningful opportunity for the US market, you need one that actually buys Bitcoin. A futures ETF doesn't change the demand for actual Bitcoin at all. It's essentially like a casino in some ways. And so
I guess we run into this question as to like, why would somebody actually buy a spot ETF instead of just investing in Bitcoin? Do you think that's going to help the average person who's not involved in crypto invest?
It's kind of like, it's also a big piece of the trust argument, right? So if I buy a spot ETF, I know that my $1,000 that I put into that ETF has a claim to $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. And so if whatever company goes belly up for some reason, there's still that Bitcoin that I am a direct claimant of. And that's really important. But as the space as a whole, the reason that we're all excited about this is because it should open up a massive new paradigm of demand. Because once an ETF is approved as a regulated product, it can be in 401ks in the US, it can be in IRAs, it can be like banks can start to offer it as a part of their product shelf. Like it totally changes access to, at the very least, Bitcoin, and by extension, demand for Bitcoin, which is why everybody gets excited about it, because they're like, oh, if the ETF goes, there's going to be a bunch of people wanting to buy, and the price is going to go up, and we're all going to end up in Valhalla. But a futures ETF doesn't do any of that. So that's the
as always, my question has to come back to the ethos. If the concept of Bitcoin was to provide more accessible and democratic finance, do you think that having something like an ETF goes against that, or do you think it will actually be good for the space?
I think theory versus reality is a very important distinction here. I mean, when we all came into the space, I actually talk about this quite a bit, both on the pod and in general. But when we all came into the space, many of us came because we drank the Kool-Aid. We went, you know what? I'm tired of the way things are going. We need drastic change. We need to shake this up. Let's go build it. And that's why a lot of us came. Now what you're realizing, and what I think anybody objectively looking at, the trajectory of the space, there is no world where the government is not involved in Western domiciles, period. Like there's just no world where that happens. And so assuming that that is true, which it is, I mean, you have to have these types of products to lead to meaningful scalability because consumers expect it. Like we're all sitting around wondering why we haven't had mass retail adoption yet. It's because they don't trust it. We have too much individual accountability and too little oversight that the average person isn't willing to participate. But once you have these regulated products, then at the very least, everybody knows the rules. And in my opinion, I think it's good for the space as a whole. But we do need to start to revise our thinking about this as a space. I mean, this whole actually, Patrick and I, who's often on this show, were talking about it earlier this morning. That I don't know. It's one of those. It's one of those things that you really have to step back and reassess your approach. And so, if you really want the space to grow, and if you really want us to have meaningful mass adoption, there is no world of that where there's not consumer protection. Period.
Well, okay, but you say that consumer protection is important and that that's one of the things that we'll be able to get from something like moving Bitcoin into a more traditional finance sector. But then we see that the SEC fines BlackRock $25 billion for misrepresenting what losses could look like to investors, for misrepresenting their asset protection strategy, for not fully disclosing all of the information to investors. And I mean, as we know, $25 billion is not a ton for BlackRock. So I don't know. I worry that we're falling back into the same trap.
We probably are to a certain extent. I think it's better. It's a hell of a lot more transparent because at the very least now with blockchain enablement, we can see what's happening inside of these protocols, generally speaking, and with proof of reserves and other developments in technology. I mean, it's becoming more and more simple. It's more streamlined, I guess. So, I mean, I don't know. There's always, but this is the point. This either is an argument against or it highlights the need that in crypto right now, how much misrepresentation happens and goes unpunished and unremedied? A lot. If you're a registered and regulated product, you're under the microscope all the time. You get audited frequently. They're constantly looking at things that you're doing. You're open to consumer complaints and all of this stuff that they have to take seriously. It really is. It really is totally different. And regardless of what we think about it, of course, I would love to live in a utopia where we all have ultimate individual responsibility and freedom. I think that that's appealing. But it turns out that the majority of society does not agree. So we can sit here in our small space and be firm in our conviction that, we're going to keep everybody out and then it'll just stay this small, exotic space forever. And it will never do what we're expecting it to do. And that is impact global society at a meaningful level. And so I guess all of that to say, I don't necessarily love giving up on those principles because that was part of the reason I came here in the first place. But at the same time, we also need to be realistic and objective and say, cool, it would be cool if we could do that. But right here, right now, that's not going to happen. So instead of
BlackRock is being fined for creating a false sense of security for investors. Mm-hmm. But I can't help but think that BlackRock itself has a false sense of security in terms of their footing in the marketplace, especially if their ETF isn't the first one that's approved or if it continues to go through those processes. And when they were fined, their Bitcoin ETF was removed from the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation website because they felt that their due diligence hadn't been done. I believe it has since been relisted, but this happened last week, Wednesday. And obviously BlackRock was upset.
Yeah, they're annoyed by it. I mean, even if I don't feel bad for BlackRock if they don't get approved first. I mean, they are the largest asset manager in the world. But by extension have, the largest client base of wealthy people globally, obviously. So it's a pretty good, I don't think they're going to have a hard time finding demand, even if they're a little bit late. Again, in a utopian society, would have hoped that they would have approved some ETFs from crypto native companies first to give other institutions an opportunity to, establish themselves in a meaningful way. Clearly that didn't happen. We can kick and scream and complain about it all we want, not going to change it. So now we just have to assess what's in front of us and say, okay, pitter patter, let's get at her. I'm tired of waiting. It's not just me, everybody's tired of waiting. This is such nonsense sitting in limbo. So anyways, obviously I'm fired up about ETFs.
Okay, I think that's enough about ETFs, but we didn't get to talk about this last week. And I know that you'll love this one, is that the SEC had a goal to collect $5 billion through enforcement actions. I think you did comment on this a little bit on Friday to say F you to Gensler, but how can a regulatory body be facing income goals?
It's insane. Like this is absolutely absurd. The SEC is not a business, period. So setting an arbitrary goal, and I'm sure it wasn't arbitrary. I'm sure it was, here's our costs of the department, $1 billion. Here's our additional revenue. And here's what we can do with it if we get it. And Gensler gets a big fucking raise or something. But like just setting an arbitrary number of 5 billion is a tough one to as a participant in the space, because I say, okay, so what if they get to 4 billion and it's September?
Right.
Are they saying like, fuck, we have to just go get $1 billion worth? Like, and then that makes you think, are these fines arbitrary? Like, is it just an arbitrary number that eventually adds up to 5 billion? Or is there like meaningful precedent on what these fines are and for what, and kind of create some an expectation set that we can all actually trust? And
I think it causes people to look for problems as well. Like, I don't know, things like we always comment on how there's more cops right before the end of the month enforcing speeding tickets and stuff like that, because they also have quotas and budgets to make. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'm all here for, adhering to the law, but also like, what were you doing the rest of the month? Weren't there bigger fish to fry? And like, are those fish dead now?
I just feel like as a regulator, your goal is obviously still like, you still have to maximize revenue. Obviously, like the police, they have to pay their bills. They only get certain budgets. They have to maximize what they're bringing in. But this makes it feel so freaking arbitrary. And there has to be better ways to build in KPIs, performance indicators for employees at the SEC. Like, shouldn't we measure them based on investigative hours, or the amount of cases they looked at, or the amount of money recovered for claimants of scams and all this other nonsense? Like, aren't those the feathers in the hat that they should be putting on there, as opposed to, oh, we collected 5 billion. Okay. All that means is that those businesses no longer have said 5 billion to put into growing the business, and by extension, making it better for their clients.
Yeah.
But like, how does that prove that anybody at the SEC did anything useful? All it proves is that they went after the biggest companies with the biggest dollar values, and fucking hoped for the best. Like, it's kind of crazy. Now, the only saving grace why I don't absolutely hate this is that if they have a goal like this, chances are they're going after only bigger fish, which means that hopefully they stay out of my DMs for a little while.
A lot of people are theorizing that next they're going to go after stable coins, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. Stablecoins, I thought, were going to be the first thing they go after. But we'll have to see. There's a lot of speculation. We were talking about the spot ETF versus a futures ETF. That's kind of like saying a fiat-backed stablecoin versus an algorithmic stablecoin. Mm-hmm. Which one do you trust more? Which one's more useful for you? One that just created value out of thin air and is just numbers on a screen, or one that's actually backed by something tangible? So anyways, we'll have to see what happens with stablecoins. I think the bigger reason that they want to focus on that, again, unfortunately, is power and control. They don't like that it
Yeah,
could possibly have an impact on their monetary policy if they don't have complete access over the fiat representative currencies that exist. Do Kwon.
The reason I brought up stablecoins, aside from people actually theorizing about them, is that Do Kwon is in the news right now, essentially saying that he might be personally liquidated to cover some of the Terra failures.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously. So normally there's like a corporate veil that prevents individual financial exposure from corporate issues, except in the event of negligence or committing a crime, which clearly Do Kwon did. And so yeah, of course they're going to liquidate his personal funds. I don't know how much personal funds he has. Did it say?
It didn't say.
I didn't see it. I would assume he has quite a few personal funds. Like, I'm sure he sold a bunch of shit before it all collapsed. If the spoils of war are still in your bank account and you're being penalized for said war, those spoils obviously are exposed to that too, in my opinion. And so this isn't super surprising. I don't feel bad for him or sad for him. It must be sizable enough that we're even talking about it, because if it was like $1 million or $2 million, it's not going to move the market at all and nobody gives a shit. So maybe he's got a decent amount of personal assets that are going to be market liquidated. Who knows? Bankruptcy is interesting. Their whole mandate is to maximize recovered value. But often you scratch your head at how they deal with some of this stuff. Like, oh, recovering maximal value is to market sell all of it at once on a DEX, which isn't actually the case. But sometimes you look at what they do and you're like, what? Why are they doing this? This makes no sense. Or they'll liquidate them in block trades to competitors and stuff for significant discounts. And it's like, why? Like, if you just sold it over the course of a couple of weeks using iceberg strategies, you'd be fine. You would have maximized way higher. Anyways, we digress. Let's move on to Pepe before we...
Yeah, let's finish with Pepe. I want to finish on a fun note.
Yeah.
Pepe's back, and people think Pepe's back because of the Bitcoin frenzy. So as our sentiment go up, Pepe, I don't know, grows, gets bigger, opens his mouth further.
Yeah. I think it's playful. It's kind of a fun meme that is stuck from the 4chan days. The Pepe. There's other memes in the space that I think are stupid. Like those really poorly drawn guys that look like they're zombies or some fucking shit. Yeah. Like, I don't like any of that stuff, or like the smooth brain or the big brain where his brains. Like, I don't love that stuff. Pepe's kind of fun, I think. When I said in our intro that I had some interesting thoughts on this, so there's a guy that apparently created the original Pepe. Oh. And had, like, unrelated to crypto. And he's super annoyed that people are using his Pepe. And so any notable project or brand or influencer gets a cease and desist from him.
Hilarious. Really?
Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens here. I don't know if people...
Especially because there's Pepe NFTs. That could be some pretty serious...
Oh, it was a huge thing.
Arts infringement, yeah.
It was a huge thing. And it still is. Like, I know people that were directly impacted by it, which is like, you stole someone else's artwork, so... Yeah. Maybe don't commercialize that. But yeah, I think hopefully it's a positive, fun leading indicator. Pepe's back, which means there's a little bit more playfulness in the space, a little bit more willingness to go. It's kind of like these mascots and memes for crypto is kind of like a flag. Yeah. It's kind of like when you post these memes and stuff, you're kind of saying, I'm in crypto. Here's my flag. I love it. I think that,
I feel a sense of belonging. Hang out with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that doesn't happen when people aren't positive about what's coming, right? During bear markets and the decline, everybody's just hiding. You don't want to be publicly associated with anybody losing money, obviously. And so, yeah, it's usually a leading indicator. It's usually pretty good. It's kind of like we talked about meme coin season. Whenever there's like a mini meme coin, that's usually a good indicator that some cool shit has happened or is happening.
Okay, well, I'm personally excited about Pepe reviving, not only because we have our own sticker packs on Telegram that I can use again, because because they were kind of sad to use for a few months, but last year for Groundhog Day, we consulted Pepe on whether he saw his shadow or not.
Oh yeah.
And if it had been like dead in the water, it would be awkward to do that again. But I've been looking forward to it all year.
I forgot about that. Fun fact, I was Pepe for last Halloween.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's almost
It's
fitting.
going to be this Halloween. Sure?
Nothing. I think I've outgrown dressing up. This
The
was the year. This was the
SBF
year.
sorcerer, the Gary Gensler ghoul.
Well, I probably could pull it off.
I have 30 days worth of monsters for you to choose from.
I only have 1 day to prepare. Tomorrow's Halloween. You know, yeah, I'm gonna be nothing. Last year I rode on Pepe. It was like one of those costumes that looks like you're sitting on his back or on his shoulders and he's carrying you. You know what I'm talking about? It was pretty funny. It's great.
All right. Okay, that is your weekend news wrap up.
That's it. It was great. Lots of stuff going on. Do Kwon, Gary Gensler, ETFs,
Normal
Bitcoin.
stuff. There's a lot of discussion about SBF and what's going on, but there wasn't any real news, so we don't have to touch on that. I'm sure we will throughout the rest of the week, though.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, all you need to know is he came out, he testified last week, and more or less said he thought things were going well, and it was other people's fault that they didn't inform him. But more or less, that's more or less what his defense was. Is I thought it was going well. I thought things were. I assumed this. I thought this, and I can kind of relate in some ways. But at the end of the day, I think the ultimate responsibility is always on the people that are leading the company, who have the most to gain and also the most to lose. But I can relate in the sense that, I mean, we're not near the size of FTX, obviously. And it's still near impossible for me to know every single thing that goes on inside the organization, obviously. Yeah. But I think what this should signal to all of us is that there is a responsibility and obligation to have oversight, especially of these major items like solvency and like critical walls being removed. Client walls or access walls being removed for certain clients and not others, and all this other shit. Like, there's got to be a way to see that stuff, like the bigger stuff that puts you in serious trouble with regulators, with your clients, with consumers. Like, so I can kind of relate on one hand because it's impossible to know everything, but I think what this shows is that we need to get much better at having oversight as a space.
JD, I wanted to end on a good note. I wanted to end on Pepe coming back.
That is a good note. It is a good note. We're just talking shit about SBF. That's a good note too. It's fun talking shit about.
Okay.
I have to recover some of my emotional loss from the money.
I feel like the sentiment around him is so negative that no one can end with a smile on SBF, you know?
SBF's in court. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. This week, we are not on Twitter, on the RBL Twitter. So like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends to watch us on my Twitter. Follow me if you want.
Or YouTube. I would love if people tuned in on YouTube because you can talk to us and we can respond.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you can make live comments. Man, you're so good at responding to these.
I'm the best. Okay, like, share, subscribe. Monday to Friday, 10:30 MST, 12:30 EST. What is that UTC? I should know offhand.
I have no freaking clue.
No?
Live show. Anyways, today, and with that, I say to you, Kiara, go find yourself.
Go find yourself.
Later.